The apparitions of Our Lady in Fatima in 1917 were one of the most significant Marian events of the 20th century, profoundly shaping Catholic spirituality and awakening a renewed awareness of the need for conversion and prayer. The three little shepherds, Lucia, Jacinta, and Francisco, were witnesses to a series of supernatural encounters with the Virgin Mary, who entrusted them with messages of strong spiritual and prophetic content. The historical context of the time was turbulent. The First World War was underway, and the world was experiencing a crisis of faith and moral values, foreshadowing the great sufferings that would come in the following decades. Our Lady of Fatima presented herself as a sign of God's mercy, warning humanity of the dangers of sin, indifference, and rebellion against the divine law. The central message of Fatima is the conversion of the heart, abandoning sin, returning to prayer, living penance, and trusting in divine mercy through the Immaculate Heart of Mary. Devotion to the Immaculate Heart was, according to the words of the Virgin herself, the path indicated by God to save souls and preserve the world from deserved punishments. During the apparitions, Our Lady revealed to the little shepherds three parts of one single secret, later known as the Secret of Fatima. The first part was a vision of hell, where the souls of sinners fall. The second spoke of the need for the consecration of Russia to the Immaculate Heart and the danger of its errors spreading throughout the world. The third part remained secret for many years, generating expectation and later speculation about its real content. In 2000, by decision of Pope John Paul II and then Cardinal Ratzinger, the third part was finally made public. The content revealed a symbolic vision, a bishop dressed in white, walking among ruins, praying for the dead, and finally being martyred together with other faithful. The official interpretation presented by the Vatican suggested that this vision referred to the suffering of the Church in the 20th century, especially the assassination attempt against John Paul II in 1981. Although the Holy See stated that the content of the secret had been fully revealed, many Catholics attached to tradition raised the hypothesis that there was still an unpublished part, perhaps of a more explicit and disturbing nature. Traditionalist Catholic theologians and authors, such as Father Nicholas Gruner and journalist Antonio Socci, argued that the prophetic part might contain specific warnings about an internal crisis in the Church. Despite these hypotheses, it is essential to remember that the Church, as mother and teacher, holds the authority to interpret and guard these mysteries according to the designs of providence. Pope Benedict XV, commenting on Fatima, affirmed that prophecies are not fatalisms, but appeals to conversion, and that the secret speaks of dangers still present. This indicates that even after 2000, the message of Fatima remains alive, current, and deeply relevant to the spiritual journey of the Church and humanity. The world remains marked by wars, attacks on the faith, moral crisis, and a growing estrangement from God, all of which were already foreshadowed by the Virgin in her maternal words. The consecration of Russia to the Immaculate Heart was carried out in various ways by previous popes, culminating in a solemn act by Pope Francis in 2022 during the conflict in Ukraine. Some question whether the formulas used in the consecrations were exactly as Our Lady requested, revealing the faithful people's zeal to obey the divine will. Amid these controversies, the constant call to penance and prayer remains, above all to the daily recitation of the Rosary, a practice insistently recommended by Mary in Fatima. The message of Fatima should not be regarded as a mere account of the past, but as a spiritual roadmap for modern times, especially in times of confusion and suffering. The Immaculate Heart of Mary continues to be the safe refuge promised by God, the sure path of salvation amid the storms of history. The faithful look to the popes with confidence and hope, expecting from them fidelity to the deposit of faith and a pastoral embrace of Fatima's message. In this scenario, the election of the new pope rekindles the debate. Will he be an instrument of the definitive fulfillment of what was announced at Fatima? Might he, in some way, be linked to the prophetic fulfillment of the third secret? The election of Pope Leo XIV was received with surprise and hope by many faithful around the world, especially by those connected to Marian tradition and spirituality. From his first words on the balcony of St. Peter's Basilica, an austere, profound, and contemplative tone was noted, in contrast to the atmosphere of euphoria often associated with modern conclaves. His prolonged silence before the crowd, prior to the apostolic blessing, was interpreted by some as a prophetic gesture, a call to spiritual sobriety. The choice of the name Leo immediately recalls two historical pontiffs, St. Leo the Great and Leo XIV, both deeply linked to spiritual combat and the defense of the faith. St. Leo the Great defended Catholic orthodoxy against heresies and protected Rome from destruction. Leo XIII, in turn, authored the famous prayer to St. Michael the Archangel after a terrifying vision of attacks on the Church. The reference to these two popes, therefore, seems to carry a symbolic dimension that resonates with the spirit of Fatima's message: combat, vigilance, and protection of the faith. Many faithful attentive to Marian prophecies saw in this choice a possible spiritual connection with Mary's call at Fatima to fight against the errors of the modern world. Without resorting to sensationalism, it is legitimate for Catholics to seek signs of providence in the choices and gestures of Peter's successors, in light of history and faith. The bishop dressed in white, described in the third secret of Fatima, was officially interpreted as John Paul II. However, nothing prevents this image from having multiple levels of realization. Some traditional theologians suggest that the vision may describe not one specific event, but a spiritual reality manifesting in different pontificates. In this sense, Leo XIV may represent a new stage of the same spiritual drama, being called to walk among the ruins of the Church, ruins not of stone, but of faith, doctrine, and unity. His first actions as Pope indicate a return to liturgical reverence, doctrinal clarity, and the centrality of prayer, elements deeply connected to Fatima's appeal. The restoration of sacred silence in celebrations, the emphasis on Eucharistic adoration, and the revaluation of the Rosary suggest a deeply Marian and penitent Pope. Attentive observers noted in his homilies a tone of warning, yet always united to hope. He speaks of a sick world, but not without remedy, of a tested church, but not defeated. Leo XIV seems to reject both empty triumphalism and relativistic progressivism, adopting a stance centered on fidelity to the tradition and magisterium of the Church. His nascent magisterium already echoes Benedict XVI, especially in the insistence on the hermeneutic of continuity and on the need to rediscover the beauty of the Catholic faith. By consecrating his pontificate to the Immaculate Heart of Mary, an act carried out in a discreet yet profoundly symbolic ceremony, he reinforced the bond with Fatima. The Pope has also encouraged the faithful to practice frequent confession, bodily penance, and traditional devotions, such as the first Saturdays, exactly as Our Lady requested in Fatima. In his private audiences, it has been reported that he dedicates long moments to silent prayer before the Blessed Sacrament, a praying Pope who intercedes for the world. Some Vatican watchers claim that the new pope is studying ancient documents related to Fatima, fueling speculation about a possible new official interpretation of the third secret. However, the pope remains discreet, respecting what has already been published while opening space for renewed meditation, never contradicting the teaching of previous pontiffs. His relationship with traditionalist faithful has been marked by pastoral charity and openness to dialogue, not with doctrinal concessions, but with spiritual fatherhood. At the same time, he has warned against the dangers of schism, disobedience, and private interpretations that depart from unity with Rome. In Leo XIV, many Catholics see a sign of reconciliation, a firm shepherd, but also a compassionate father, seeking to heal the Church's internal wounds. Before this new pontificate, the hearts of the faithful turn again to the message of Fatima. Is the new pope fulfilling a decisive stage of God's plan announced in 1917? The message of Fatima transcends time and space. It is not merely a historical warning, but a prophetic call with eschatological implications for the Church and humanity. The third part of the secret, with its symbolic and dramatic language, evokes a scenario of persecution, martyrdom, and purification, proper to the final times described in Scripture. The vision of the bishop dressed in white, ascending a hill among corpses before being killed, suggests an image of the Church as martyr, walking through a valley of tears toward her patch. In many ways, this vision may be unfolding gradually, not in a single event, but in a spiritual process of purification and suffering lived by the Church over the decades. The struggle between light and darkness announced by Fatima has intensified, especially through ideologies that deny God, attack the family, relativize truth, and persecute Christians. The internal crisis of the Church, moral scandals, doctrinal confusion, and loss of vocations also seems to be part of this scenario of suffering and tribulation. Leo XIV, elected in a time of great uncertainty and division, assumes Peter's throne as a shepherd called to steer Christ's bark amid the storm. Like Leo XIII, who had a vision of the devil's attacks on the Church in the 20th century, Leo XIV appears clearly aware of the ongoing spiritual drama. His pontificate emerges as a providential response to the growing darkness, not as triumphalism, but as firm resistance in the field of faith. The Pope, according to Catholic tradition, is the katechon, he who, according to some theologians, restrains the manifestation of supreme evil, keeping the Church firm until the time determined by God. The importance of the Holy Father as a point of unity and guardian of the faith becomes even more evident in times of confusion and division. Fatima's message warned of apostasy, the betrayal of many within the Church, and the loss of faith by a large part of humanity. These signs seem increasingly evident. Empty churches, scarce vocations, distorted doctrines, inverted morality, desacralized liturgies. Leo XIV faces the mission of courageously and prudently restoring what has been wounded, especially in the areas of liturgy, catechesis, and priestly life. His staunch defense of the traditional Mass and of the Church's moral doctrine is not merely an aesthetic choice, but a prophetic gesture in the face of contemporary spiritual collapse. By affirming that beauty saves, the Pope reaffirms the Catholic view that worthy worship leads to living faith, and living faith transforms the world. The third secret, with its image of ruins, seems to refer to the abandonment of eternal truths, replaced by passing ideologies and hollow structures. The new Pope calls the Church to rebuild on the secure foundation of tradition, like a new Tobiah raising the fallen walls of Jerusalem. There is also a Marian dimension in this combat. Mary is the woman clothed with the sun who wages war against the dragon, and Fatima is her visible banner in present times. Leo XIV appears to recognize this reality, promoting the consecration of nations, encouraging the rosary, and proclaiming Mary as Queen of Peace and mediatrix of all graces. Christian eschatology is not catastrophism but hope. Fatima does not end in blood, but in the triumph of the Immaculate Heart. For this reason, the new Pope frequently speaks of eschatological hope, silent fidelity, and hidden witness that saves the world from within. Persecution, when faced with faith, becomes a seed of holiness. The blood of martyrs is still the strength of the Church. Leo XIV, by embracing his cross and exhorting the flock to fidelity, walks in the line of prophetic popes who did not flee before the wolf. Thus, the eschatological combat foretold at Fatima finds in the new pope a shepherd willing to lead souls not away from Calvary, but into the heart of Mary, where Christ reigns. The last word of Fatima's message is not punishment, nor suffering, nor persecution. The last word is hope. In the end, my Immaculate Heart will triumph. This promise of Mary is not a pious illusion, but a prophecy founded on Christ's definitive victory over evil and its concrete application through the mediation of the Mother of God. The triumph of the Immaculate Heart is the triumph of grace over sin, truth over error, charity over selfishness, in every soul, in every family, and in the whole Church. Penance, far from being an outdated practice, becomes the necessary path to that victory, for only those who die to the world can rise with Christ. Pope Leo XIV has insisted on the importance of interior penance, frequent confession, and reparation offered with love for the sins of the world. He rescues the forgotten tradition of the First Fridays and First Saturdays, as requested by our Lord and Our Lady, as acts of trust and reparation. His personal example of simplicity, sobriety, and silent prayer inspires millions of Catholics to resume the path of daily holiness. In the Pope's catechesis, a call to personal consecration to the Immaculate Heart stands out as a filial response to Mary's spiritual motherhood. This consecration is not merely devotional, but deeply apostolic. It is an offering of one's life for God to dispose of it according to his saving designs. The Pope has affirmed that the triumph of Mary's heart will not come through human strategies, but through prayer, hidden sacrifice, and faithful love of the gospel. By convening days of fasting and Eucharistic adoration on a global level, Leo XIV reminds that the Church's strength lies in prayer and in the real presence of Christ in the Blessed Sacrament. He has also promoted the return to the spirituality of silence as resistance to interior dispersion and as a path to encounter God. The figure of the Pope, as Vicar of Christ, assumes a prophetic and eschatological role in this scenario. On earth, he is a sign of the unity and fidelity of Christ's bride. Many faithful see in the current Pope not only a spiritual ruler, but a heavenly response to the silent supplications of those who have prayed for decades for Mary's triumph. The growth of Marian shrines, prayer groups, cenacles, and movements of consecration to the Immaculate Heart reflects this silent wave of faith that the Pope is channeling. Leo XIV especially encourages families, reminding them that the Christian home is the first spiritual battlefield, where one learns to pray, forgive, and love according to God. The Pope has promoted a return to traditional catechesis, the reading of the Catechism, and the use of the scapular and the miraculous medal as instruments of spiritual protection. Far from promoting catastrophic visions or fostering fear, he invites the faithful to trust fully in Fatima's promise, living with courage and inner peace. The Church is living a time of pruning, of purification, but also of grace. It is the dark night before dawn, the painful labor before new life. The triumph of the Immaculate Heart will come first in souls, where there is confession, communion, rosary, and sacrifice. There Mary will reign with Christ. The new Pope has emphasized that this is Mary's time, a time to trust like her, to obey like her, to suffer and hope with her. The Holy Father has already expressed the intention to renew, solemnly, the consecration of humanity to the Immaculate Heart at Fatima, before the original image venerated by the three little shepherds. For him, this renewal will not be merely symbolic, but a real act of entrusting the Church to Mary's maternal heart in the name of all wounded humanity. Just as John Paul II entrusted the world to the Virgin, Leo XIV seems to be the Pope called to accompany spiritually the visible fulfillment of the prophesied triumph. And so our reflection ends, with eyes on heaven, feet on the ground, and the rosary in hand, trusting that despite all tribulations, in the end, the Immaculate Heart of Mary will triumph.